Adler and many Adlerians believe a lot of our personality does get pretty highly influenced before the age of like 6 or 7. So a lot of those experiences and a lot of what's happening in our environment is influential, but we still know developmentally that trauma happens or positive experiences happen.
Welcome to Jagged Edge. It's a leadership podcast, and today we have Dr. Jon Sperry. So many of us are questioning ourselves, especially after the last 3 years of changing environment, especially in the workplace. And one thing that's really certain, human behavior and development. And who better than Dr. Jon Sperry to share with us Adlerian psychology, how we behave, our behavior, or just a lot of different terms that helps us understand our employees, our team members, so we could encourage them, empower them, and work in a cohesive way. Dr. Jon Sperry, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Thanks for having me here today. I'm sitting here in South Florida, in Boca Raton, Florida, and I'm a clinical mental health counseling professor at Lynn University. So I've been teaching here for 10 years and really doing a lot of training of folks who are hoping to become mental health professionals. And before being in the teaching world, I was working as a mental health professional, like as a therapist in substance abuse treatment programs, where I was doing talk therapy with individuals and group settings with folks with addictions, behavioral addictions, and substance-related addictions. So that's some of my background a little bit as far as therapy. And then over time, I worked in college counseling centers, doing talk therapy with students. And I've been working at Florida Atlantic University's counseling center for the past 15 years and really love that work and that population. And yeah, before that, I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and both of my parents are connected very much to Adlerian psychology. So I have sort of the experience of being raised with some of the Adlerian psychology principles I know that we'll talk about today as a child, and then learn more about them as like a mental health practitioner in my adult years and college education. And now today I do practice quite a bit of using the Adlerian psychology principles and practices in my work with clients today, and then also applying them in other settings outside of therapy, like in group settings, or applying Adlerian psychology in the classroom or with myself, or in workplace settings, or even how I mentor students and things like that. So that's a little bit of background about me.
Yes, lovely to hear that, having both parents as therapists and then just sort of being raised in an environment must be a unique experience. And mine were at-home mom, and I had a dad who was a professor. So a little bit of similarity there as well. And speaking of workplace, could you highlight Adlerian psychology and the benefits of how that would help us, especially in leading teams in the workplace?
It's a really good question, because Adler's work is very focused on like the social embeddedness of psychology. And like what that means is Adler believed that our mental health could be measured by the degree of the sense of belonging that we have in our social circles, like at work or at school or at home. So because of like the nature of the socially embedded way of psychology that Adler thought about, is it really saw that like our problems and the solutions to our problems are all in social settings, and that to be in the workplace or to be in a position where there's like leaders and followers, that we have to like get along with each other and to cooperate with each other. And if we feel like in the workplace setting that we don't have a place, or we don't have a way to contribute, or feel like what we're doing is meaningful, we often will struggle in those different parts of our lives. So I think from a leadership perspective, Adler's ideas very much are relevant, because Adler looks at how can we navigate the social structures in our different cultures and in the different countries that we live in, and the different settings that we're in that may very much not have a cooperative, egalitarian approach. I think Adler looked at really having more of like, we're equals rather than like maybe like from the perspective of a therapist or mental health setting. You might say like, oh, the therapist is the expert and the client is going to be told what to do. But Adler looked at it more as like, we're equals. So therefore, when you apply that same paradigm of like that we're equals, then it really transforms how we think about leadership, where that like leaders are not just about being, it's not about that this person is better than someone or that they have a higher standing or that there's something superior about them. But I think Adler would look at the responsibility of the person in a place of leadership, and that to like, I think so many of his principles, when you apply them to leadership, can be so powerful, because I think Adler would say like, it's about contribution rather than about being like on a structure of being higher or lower. Or Adler would be more focused on like, I think leading by example. Like he wouldn't be telling people what to do. He'd be in there doing the good work with maybe the folks who maybe he oversees or from a leadership perspective. But that's like, I guess, a few examples of that.
It sounds more like when we're equal, we're collaborating, we're teaching one another, we're learning from one another. It takes so much pressure off of having to have all the answers. And as leaders, we can use the strengths of each individual that are unique in our teams, and we can harvest that. And that just invites everyone to have a buy-in or a ability to contribute in a meaningful way. And when that happens, it brings that joy, inner satisfaction, and an ability to perform at your best. So that really makes perfect sense to me. So we talk about lifestyle in Adlerian psychology, and how does it play in terms of contribution, especially in the workplace that we were just talking about?
So Adler's like concept of lifestyle, it looks at really our personality and the way that we show up in the different parts of our lives with the different people and the different problems that we may have. Maybe like a really short definition is like, lifestyle is like, how do I show up and solve the problems of life? And those problems could be in the workplace, they could be in my love relationship, in my family, in my community. And Adler's looking at like the idea of that our style of life or our lifestyle is a pattern, kind of consistent way that we often will show up and solve problems. And that doesn't necessarily mean like it's a typology of like there's one type of personality that always has to be in control or always has to be perfect or always needs to be the center of attention or be validated. It could be different facets of those personality pieces, like some of those examples that I just listed. But I think Adler would still look at like holistically, like how does that person show up to deal with the problems in the workplace, to deal with the problems in my life that I'm currently struggling with. And then I think with the lifestyle, like assessment, when we're looking at like in coaching or in talk therapy, is really my ability to look at my own strengths and my own liabilities or deficits by understanding the way I show up and seeing like, hey, there's within this sometimes there are mistakes in our mistaken way of solving problems. And then there also maybe are some workable parts of that too. And I think when we're aware of that, like that self-insight or self-awareness helps us to become better parents or helps us to become a better leader or a better therapist or a better person in general. So that's where I think our understanding of lifestyle through Adler's terms is really useful in that it looks at the person holistically. It looks at understanding, again, that pattern way that we show up and solve problems in different facets of our life, and that we're constantly growing and evolving, and we're developing and learning new understandings about ourselves as we maybe get feedback from other people, or as we make a mistake or continue to make a mistake and learn about it through just like life showing up and smacking us in the face.
When is this lifestyle? How does it form? Is it something that you're born with? How does this work?
There are some different schools of thought on that. I know in the Adlerian psychology world, including Adler himself, did talk about that. Like our personality for sure is influenced quite a bit in our early lives. And I know that from like a developmental psychology perspective, that as Adler and many Adlerians believe, a lot of our personality does get pretty highly influenced before the age of like 6 or 7. So a lot of those experiences and a lot of what's happening in our environment is influential, but we still know developmentally that trauma happens or positive experiences happen, and positive like attachments or teachers or mentors or family members who maybe stepped up to the plate to support us as life evolved and changed as young children. Adler also still really looked at the holistic nature of people as well. So like our experiences are just a small influence, but like what we do with those experiences matters a lot as well. In addition to like the holistic element of personality or our lifestyle, Adler also saw that as a trained medical doctor who was an ophthalmologist, he did see that our biology still influences us too. So today, if you think of like, well, we have genetic loading for cancer, we may have genetic loading for our personality features and our temperament, or we have genetic loading for other health conditions. So the fact that there can be a genetic basis to the different parts of our behavior and our personality show that it's not just our experiences or just our trauma or just the positive people in our lives or just the biological influence, but it's really a mix of various facets and environmental influences, and personality develops around all of these different elements.
If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website, Yogi Patel, TTE.com.